Hey everybody, it's Ron, and today I'm going to be reviewing the classic Star Wars novel that gave birth to the expanded universe in the 90s. This is the first novel in the Thrawn trilogy written by Timothy Zahn in 1991, and I thought it'd be interesting to review this series and try to imagine what it would look like if this was the next set of Star Wars movies filmed in the early 90s. The first thing that struck me was how much more complex the story was compared to the original trilogy, but at the same time, the characters are still written faithfully, which is an amazing feat. It must have been a huge task to continue the Star Wars story and keep the familiar elements, but also go into uncharted territory and do something different. And Zahn does this perfectly with the creation of Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is probably the most famous Star Wars villain in the expanded universe. Right from the start, it's clear that he's a very different character from Darth Vader. First of all, he's not force sensitive, he doesn't have any powers, but he's still a huge threat to our heroes because of his intellect. Zahn introduces him as a military genius, and it's the perfect opener for the character because we get to read how calmly he can take down a whole fleet just by studying the enemy's art, which is a fascinating idea. If you think about it, the Empire is kind of the underdog in this story, and that makes so much sense because the New Republic has been establishing itself for 5 years now, so it's going to take Thrawn a while to try and get the power back. It's so interesting to have that role reversal in a Star Wars story, but at the same time, you're still worried for Han, Luke, and Leia because Thrawn is very dangerous. So after this new threat is introduced, Zahn shows us what Han, Luke, and Leia have been up to these past 5 years. And even though they've defeated the Empire and Mon Mothma is in charge of the New Republic, there's still a lot of inner turmoil and not everyone is getting along as much as you would think. So it's interesting to have this much conflict with the good guys. The main thing I like about this first book is how many locations there are, and as much as I love something like The Empire Strikes Back, it's pretty minimal as far as locations go. You have Hoth and then Bespin and a little bit of Dagobah, but other than that, it's a lot of space chasing. And even though that works great for the story, and obviously it's a classic movie, I prefer Star Wars adventures where you feel like you've been to a lot of different amazing places all in one story, and this novel definitely does that somehow without getting too convoluted, so I feel like I got the best of both worlds with this book. At first, I wanted a villain that could rival Darth Vader and was slightly disappointed with just a Grand Admiral. And when I describe it that way, it sounds boring, but it works because Zahn is smart enough to know that if he's going to go with a villain as different as Thrawn, he also has to throw in a dark Jedi named Joruus C'baoth, as well as an assassin bodyguard named Rook to keep things interesting. Even though there's a lot going on in this story, the three main characters pretty much get equal time, and everyone gets to shine. Luke's journey as a Jedi continues in an interesting way, and pairing him with Mara Jade works well because up until this point, fans weren't used to Luke having a love interest. And although in this first novel, Mara Jade hates Luke because she thinks he ruined her life as the Emperor's hand, there's still a lot of tension there, and Zahn slightly hints that she might find him honorable when they're on the run together. I was really impressed with the way he wrote Han in this book. I heard Harrison Ford every time I read one of his lines, so that was really enjoyable. Leia also gets some interesting things to do in this. Not only is she trying to work on getting the New Republic running, she's also pregnant with twins, and that sends her all the way to Kashyyyk at one point to hide from the Noghri, who are a race of aliens that were private guards for the Emperor and even Darth Vader. And although I think they're really cool and scary in this story, I did ask myself why I was just hearing about them now, because the Emperor had his royal guard in the original trilogy, and we never saw a Noghri character. So it was a little hard to suspend my disbelief that they just randomly show up here for this story. The Smuggler Talon card is also a new addition, and I liked his character because he added that element that Han had in A New Hope where you don't know where his loyalties lie. So it was a smart move to have someone fill in that role a little bit. I also think the Salamiri is a pretty brilliant idea. Bringing a creature who can stop a Jedi from using the Force into the fold is very useful for Thrawn, because he can keep Sabaoth at bay and become a bigger threat to Luke, because not only is he smarter than Luke, he can now stop him from using his powers. Although Thrawn sort of fails at the end of this novel, he's willing to see the bigger picture, and this is what makes him a unique villain compared to someone like Darth Vader. His partner, Captain Pellaeon, can make suggestions, and Thrawn actually listens, and I feel like Darth Vader would never let anyone talk back to him, so that was interesting to read. It's a great start to this trilogy, and if for whatever reason you've never heard of this until now, check it out because it's cool to imagine this being the definitive sequel to the original trilogy. And I couldn't help picturing it as a movie in my head while I read it, so I guess that's the next best thing. Let me know what you thought of this book in the comments if you've read it, and please be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, it's Ron here with a quick announcement. When I started this channel, I was reading and reviewing the Dune books and other sci-fi related material, and most of you might not know that I'm also a musician. So when I was reading these sci-fi books, I started to get inspired and decided to make my own soundtrack to use for my videos, and now I'm excited to tell you all about the first volume in the Ron Reviews original soundtrack collection. This album includes the first 17 tracks featured on my channel, and it's available now exclusively on Bandcamp. Be sure to check the description of this video for the link to the album. Thanks so much for the support so far. I know I'm just starting out, but I hope you're having as much fun as I am. So check out the original soundtrack Volume 1 on Bandcamp. This music is great if you want something moody and atmospheric to listen to while you're reading some science fiction. I think you're going to love it. Thanks.